Look deeper into the story. Listen closer to the language.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Mind Outpost.
So, I want you to imagine a butcher's knife for a second.
Okay, a butcher's knife.
Right. And this knife has been used every single day for like 19 years. It's used to violently hack apart thousands of massive, heavy ox carcasses.
That is a lot of wear and tear.
Exactly. But imagine you hold that knife up to the light, and the edge of the blade doesn't have a single microscopic scratch on it.
It looks brand new.
It looked like it was forged this morning. And today we are taking that impossible knife and using it to figure out why your inbox, your commute, and your difficult coworkers are currently burning you out.
It's basically a survival guide for the modern human mind.
Yes, drawn straight from the ancient Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi. We're specifically looking at his chapters on preserving life and navigating the human world, which are Yang Shengzu and Ren Jianxi.
Right, and honestly, it is a profound shift in perspective. The core revelation we're unpacking today completely flips our modern intuition on its head.
How so? Like, what is our usual intuition when we hit a wall?
Well, when we feel overwhelmed by, a toxic environment or a seemingly impossible workload, our instinct is usually to fight harder.
Just push through it.
Exactly. Assert dominance, set harder boundaries, aggressively hack away at the problem.
But Zhuangzi disagrees.
Completely. He suggests that the secret to surviving the daily grind without losing your psychological edge, it isn't about fighting the obstacles, it's about fundamentally changing how your mind interacts with them.
And he grounds this whole idea in the story of Cookding, right? The butcher with that pristine 19-year-old knife.
Right, the famous Poudingji Nu allegory. So Cookding is explaining his craft to a lord, and he outlines these 3 tiers of skill.
Okay, break those down for us.
First, you have the bad cook. The bad cook hacks directly at the bones. They use brute force to chop through the hardest parts of the animal.
Which obviously ruins the blade.
Right, because of that violent friction, they destroy their knife. They need a brand new one every single month. Then you have the mediocre cook.
Do they last a bit longer?
A bit, yeah. They are more strategic. They cut through the meat and try to avoid the biggest bones, but they still wear down the edge. They need a new knife every year.
But Cookding has used the exact same knife for almost 2 decades.
Thousands of oxen carved. Flawless blade.
Now, I'm reading this allegory, and I'm thinking about you, the listener, trying to survive a brutal week at the office or like a really tense family dynamic.
It's relatable.
It is. I can see how it's tempting to ask if we are the bad cooks, dulling our spirits. But, and I have to push back a little here, carving an animal is a matter of physical anatomy.
Sure.
How does a literal butcher's knife apply to the abstract, invisible psychological stress of navigating modern society?
Well, we have to decode the metaphor a bit. The ox in this story isn't just livestock.
What is it then?
The ox is the massive, complex, obstacle-filled reality you live in. It represents your workplace, your financial pressures, a hostile political climate, just the daily grind.
Okay, so if the ox is reality, the knife is.
The knife is your mind. It is your inner spirit, your psychological vitality.
So the bones, the parts that destroy the knife.
The bones are the immovable obstacles, the stubborn conflicts, the deeply toxic people.
Wow. Oh.
When you force your way through life's problems by directly clashing with them, like when you meet workplace aggression with aggressive defensiveness, you are hacking at the bone.
Or when you obsessively try to force a project to go a specific way despite massive resistance.
Yes, exactly. You are creating massive friction. And in that scenario, it doesn't even matter if you technically win the argument or force the project through.
The blade still chips.
The blade chips. You damage your own mental sharpness. You flood your body with cortisol. You basically experience burnout.
Because the bad cook destroys his own primary tool by demanding that the bone yield to the knife.
Precisely.
That reframes burnout entirely. I mean, burnout isn't just a symptom of working too many hours. It's the inevitable result of the friction caused by how our minds clash with reality.
That's the exact takeaway.
So, if hacking at the bones chips the blade, how does Cookding keep his spirit intact? Like, how does he actually avoid the friction?
He operates by what Zhuangzi calls following natural laws, or Yihu Xianli.
Yihu Tianli. Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Cookding tells the Lord that he doesn't even use his eyes to see the ox anymore. He stops relying purely on his sensory perception and just lets his spirit guide him.
He senses the inherent structure of the animal.
Right. He slides his blade only through the empty spaces between the joints.
And this brings up, I think, the most striking phrase in the text.
Yeah.
Cookding notes that the joints of the ox have spaces, but his blade has no thickness.
Yes, that is crucial.
Let's break down this idea of a blade having no thickness, because this is the psychological key here. In this metaphor, the thickness of your blade is your ego.
Exactly.
It's your rigid preconceptions, your emotional baggage, and maybe most importantly, your absolute need to be right.
That thickness is the very thing that gets caught on the bone.
Exactly. Think about walking into a really contentious meeting. If you walk in full of your own agenda, terrified of looking foolish, determined to prove a point,
Your blade is incredibly thick.
right, you are taking up massive psychological space. And when a thick blade meets a tight joint, say a coworker who pushes back on your idea, it gets wedged, it gets stuck.
And here is the deeper psychological causality of that moment. Our egos actually actively seek out the bone.
Wait, really? Why would we want that friction?
Because the ego defines itself through resistance. When you clash with that difficult coworker, it feels terrible, but on a subconscious level, your ego gets to say, I am right, they are wrong.
I am the victim, they are the villain.
Exactly. The ego validates its own existence through that friction. But as Zhuangzi points out, indulging that ego is what destroys your vitality.
So to have no thickness means dropping that ego entirely.
Yes. When you drop the need to be right, when you let go of your stubborn biases, you've essentially stripped your psychological blade down to zero thickness.
What happens then?
The text states that when you insert that which has no thickness into the spaces between the joints, you find abundant room to maneuver.
You find room to play. You just flow right through the gaps.
Exactly. You flow through.
But we should probably clarify something here. This sounds a bit like toxic positivity or just passively ignoring problems. He isn't just blindly swinging the knife and hoping he doesn't hit a bone, right?
No, not at all. And the text specifically warns against carelessness. Finding the empty space does not mean life is effortless.
Right, because there are still complicated joints.
Exactly. Cookding explains what happens when he encounters a truly tangled, complicated joint. He doesn't ignore it, but he also doesn't hack at it.
So what does he do?
He says he realizes how difficult it is, so he slows down. He acts with extreme caution. He fixes his gaze, moves slowly, and then makes a microscopic, perfectly aligned action.
A subtle release instead of brute force.
Yes. And the text says the problem just falls apart like a crumbling clod of earth hitting the ground. He solves a massive, heavy problem with precision and timing rather than force.
Okay, so keeping your ego out of the meat works beautifully when your obstacle is a dead ox or, I don't know, a complicated spreadsheet.
Right, a spreadsheet isn't malicious.
Exactly. The spreadsheet doesn't actively plot against you. But what happens when the obstacle is a living, breathing, toxic boss who is actively trying to ruin your day? A butcher's knife doesn't help much there.
It's a very different challenge.
And that exact problem is what Zhuangzi tackles next, shifting from the butcher block out into the chaos of human society.
Yes, we move to the chapter covering the human world, Ren Jianxi. And Zhuangzi introduces a scenario specifically designed to test this philosophy against active malice.
This is the story with Yanhui and Confucius, right?
That's the one. Now, Zhuangzi often uses Confucius as a literary device here, kind of putting Taoist ideas into his mouth.
And the setup here is intense. Yanhui wants to travel to the state of Wei.
And Wei is in absolute chaos.
Total disaster. The ruler is a tyrant who is brutalizing his people, and the society is just falling apart. Yanhui tells his teacher that he wants to go there to fix the problems, save the people, and reform this terrible ruler.
It's a classic hero's journey, really.
Right. And reading this, my modern brain is screaming at Yanhui to go in there and HR manage this tyrant into submission.
Just set firm boundaries. Call out the toxicity.
Change the culture.
Yeah.
But Confucius tells Yanhui that he is basically walking into a death trap. Why? Like, why is trying to proactively fix a toxic environment treated as a fatal mistake?
Because it is the exact equivalent of the bad cook swinging his cleaver into the thickest femur bone he can find.
Oh, wow.
The tyrant of Wei is an immovable bone. If Yanhui marches in there preaching morality, telling the ruler how wrong he is, and demanding change, he's bringing his thickness.
His rigid agenda, his moral superiority.
His ego. He's bringing all of that into a situation that has zero space for it.
Even though his agenda is morally good, I mean, he wants to stop a tyrant.
But the physics of the situation do not care about his good intentions. If you introduce a thick blade into a space with no gaps, you get destroyed.
So what's the lesson there?
The critical insight Confucius offers is that you cannot cure external turbulence with internal turbulence.
Let me repeat that. You cannot cure external turbulence with internal turbulence.
Exactly. If you walk into a toxic environment, agitated, righteous, and determined to force a change, you are just adding friction to a system that is already overheating.
If you walk into a dysfunctional office and declare war on the dysfunction, you usually just become part of the toxicity, get chipped.
You become the bad cook.
But this leaves us with a massive problem. If we can't aggressively confront toxicity, and we can't all just quit our jobs and move to a mountain, how do we engage with the world?
Confucius offers Yanhui a specific preparatory practice before he can safely face the tyrant. He calls it Shinzai.
Shinzai, the fasting of the mind.
Yes.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, this has absolutely nothing to do with food or dietary restriction.
No, not at all.
It is an intentional starvation of the ego.
It's a methodology for achieving that no thickness we talked about. Confucius breaks it down into 3 distinct levels of listening.
Okay, walk us through them.
He tells Yan Hui, you must stop listening with your ears, and you must stop listening with your mind. Instead, you must learn to listen with your vital energy, or your spirit, your ki.
Let's ground this in a real scenario so we can see how these 3 levels actually function. Let's say you are sitting in a brutal, totally unfair performance review.
Okay, stressful situation.
Very. Your boss is criticizing you for something that absolutely wasn't your fault. How does listening with the ears work here?
So listening with the ears is purely sensory. You are just hearing the literal sound waves of your boss's voice. It's surface-level data.
But we don't stay there for long, do we?
No, humans rarely stay at this level for more than a fraction of a second. We immediately escalate to level 2, which is listening with the mind.
And according to Zhuangzi, the worldly mind is inherently rigid. It's just full of preconceptions.
Yes. The mind is a categorization engine. In that performance review, you aren't actually listening to understand. Your mind is frantically assessing the threat.
You're filtering every word through your own historical baggage.
And your need to defend your identity. While your boss is speaking, your mind is loading up counterattacks. Your heart rate elevates. Cortisol floods your bloodstream.
And your ego desperately prepares to strike back at the bone.
Exactly. You are mentally hacking at the obstacle before you even open your mouth.
So to fast the mind means to turn off that defense mechanism. But I have to ask, isn't that just rolling over? Like, if you stop your mind from defending you, aren't you just letting a toxic person walk all over you?
That is the most common misconception, but that assumes the only 2 options are aggressive resistance or passive surrender. Fasting the mind unlocks a 3rd option.
Which is listening with your cry.
Yes, listening with your vital energy. Confucius explains that this state is characterized by absolute emptiness. The text states, the Tao gathers in emptiness.
So what happens when you listen from that empty state?
You don't offer the rigid resistance the toxic person expects, but you also don't internalize their attack.
Okay, I think I see the mechanism here. It's kind of like water in a riverbed.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because water doesn't argue with the jagged rock in its path. It doesn't get defensive, and it doesn't try to fix the rock or convince the rock to move.
Right, it doesn't preach to the rock.
Exactly. But it also doesn't just stop flowing. Because the water has no thickness, no rigid shades of its own, it instantly recognizes the shape of the rock and just flows flawlessly around it.
That is the perfect analogy. Water exerts immense power precisely because it doesn't fight the rock directly. It finds the empty space around it.
So in that toxic review, you become water.
Or like a mirror. A mirror reflects an ugly room perfectly. It understands the reality of the room, but it doesn't absorb the ugliness into itself.
It doesn't hold on to the image once the situation is past.
Exactly. By maintaining that inner emptiness, you protect your vital energy. You observe the toxic boss, you understand their anger, but you don't let it latch onto your ego.
You remain empty.
Which makes you infinitely adaptable. You can see the tiny spaces to maneuver. Maybe that's a strategic concession. Maybe it's a carefully timed question that diffuses the tyrant without triggering their wrath. You navigate the danger without letting it touch your core.
So to bring this entire journey together for you, the listener, we've moved from a 19-year-old butcher's knife all the way to the chaos of a tyrant's court.
And the overarching lesson is about preservation.
Exactly. We do not have to let the modern world grind us down. Burnout is not a requirement of modern life. It is a symptom of how we are clashing with it.
It's the friction.
Right. By dropping our egos, by actively fasting our minds of rigid preconceptions and that desperate need to be right, we change the physics of our interactions.
We stop hacking at the bone.
We become water. we start finding the natural empty spaces in our workplaces, our relationships, and our societies.
And as you take this back into your daily routine, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
The next time you feel a spike of adrenaline, hopelessly stuck or burning out against an immovable obstacle, whether that is a project, a person, or a massive life change, just pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, are you frustrated because the obstacle is truly impassable, or are you frustrated because your blade is simply too thick with your own assumptions to find the empty space beside it?
Language shapes our thinking. Keep thinking, and I'll see you in the next episode.